I want to read three headlines. Just want to read three headlines that I think will sort of set the stage for what we're going to talk about here for the next little bit. I generally start my talks by reading three headlines from that morning's news and then relate each one to a larger theme that I'm going to talk about. The second headline actually is also from this morning's Journal. It says, U.S. executives remain pessimistic. Great. Here's what it says. The audience really seems to appreciate that somebody got up early that morning and did a fair amount of work for them. The best part about what I do at Fortune is that I get a 360-degree view of what's happening in the business climate. I am constantly learning about the largest issues going on any place, and I'm learning about them from the people who are making things happen. Jamie Dimon, here next to me, Chairman and CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. Muhtar Kent is Chairman and CEO of the Coca-Cola Company. Yuanqing Yang is Chairman and CEO of Lenovo Group. I get to talk to the business leaders of great corporations, the entrepreneurs who are going to disrupt business, to the government leaders who are going to help shape the environment for all of these businesses, and of course to consumers and others who are buying or not buying the goods and services from those businesses. For decades, the engine of global growth was the Western European and US and Japanese consumer. No more. Our business models used to last years, many years, maybe 100 years. And now all of them are changing. The economic environment facing business leaders is a real challenge, in large part because it's so different from everything we knew before. Every business, I don't care what business you're in, is in danger of being disrupted by a competitor they never even thought of. The disruption that can happen to a company in no time is like nothing we have ever seen before. We're in an environment where it seems like no competitive advantage is sustainable anymore. Because even the companies that seem to have ironclad competitive advantages turned out not to. I mean, everybody here can remember when Motorola ruled the world of mobile phones. And then Nokia did. And then RIM did. And now none of them do, right? And it all happened like that. Another thing that's going to last for a long time, geopolitical unrest. What's new is that there is instability among the great powers, US, China, Russia, that didn't used to be there.
Capital is leaving Russia in the past few months, over $100 billion. So the medium-term outlook here, probably stagnation. It looks hard to avoid. Prosperity for Vladimir Putin and his friends, but much less than that, at least for those who work in the real economy.
Every business person has to confront and embrace the fact that government's playing a larger role in our business lives, and it's not going to go back to the way it was. Our topic is business versus government. Recognizing the fact that every business, and particularly this industry, the tech industry broadly defined, is very heavily influenced by government policy, and there's been an awful lot of talk about which of those policies are good and which are bad, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Getting ahead of those trends is a real challenge for every business, and I don't care who you are, what business you're in. We can't be paralyzed and think that we can wait for things to settle down. It's not going to happen. We have to be active, play offense, and move forward. The way the best leaders are doing it, they innovate their business model, they manage for value, they build their human capital, and they get radically customer-centric. From where I sit, I get to see a lot of early indicators that really tell us where the economy is going. Is it going to be more consumer-focused, more savings-focused, more export-focused? I can take these bits and pieces that I get from leaders all around the world and put together a coherent view of where the economy is going. The IMF forecast for U.S. economic growth is 2.2% this year, increasing to 3.1% next year. We often forget that over the past 40 years, the U.S. economy has averaged growth of 2.8% a year. And that includes all those great years of most of the 80s, most of the 90s, the first 7 years of this century. 3.1% is terrific. We've got to face the fact that this is an era of good economic growth. It's full of opportunity. That's the new reality that we have to face. Even though the economy is growing at the rate it used to, it isn't growing in the same way it used to. Opportunity is out there, but we have to get there in a different way. And I want to suggest 3 principal changes in the way this good economy is growing, ways that we have to adapt to. For 500 years, the scarce resource in business was financial capital. It no longer is, even for capital-intensive companies. For all of us, the scarce resource is human capital. My new book is called Humans Are Underrated, and it arose out of an article I wrote for the Fortune 500 issue of Fortune, which began with the question, in the economy of 5 or 10 years from now, what will people do better than computers? We are entering an era where the skills that our economy values highly are changing in a historic way that we'll get to here in a second. Over and over, we're seeing technology taking over jobs that people used to do. Now, people will still be valuable, but we had better figure out what skills the economy will value as we go forward from here, because those are the ones that we have to get world-class great at. What will people do better than computers? The traditional approach to answering this question is to ask, well, what is it that computers just inherently cannot do? And I'm saying, don't ask that question, okay? It's the wrong way. Don't ask what computers can't do, because over and over, the answers are wrong. Instead, ask what humans are most driven to do. What are they? Well, that's becoming clear too. What we must do, even if a computer can do it too, empathize is the foundation of all else. Working in groups, telling stories, solving problems creatively, building relationships. These skills, the skills of human interaction, are going to be the most valuable. Talent is Overrated is a book about great performance, and not just really good performance, but great performance, world-class great performance, and where it really comes from. This is not a bunch of my opinions about where great performance comes from. There's 30 years of good research on it, which most people really are not well aware of. The term world-class great gets thrown around pretty easily, but in fact, increasingly, we all have to be world-class great because we're competing with everyone in the world. Standards are rising. If you really believe that you must have this natural 1 in a million gift to be great at something, then when you encounter the roadblocks, you will take it as evidence that you don't have that gift. But if you really believe that those roadblocks can be overcome, that by doing the deliberate practice you can get past them, then you have at least a chance of becoming world-class great. This basic idea of how we get to be great performers is inherently fascinating, and we're in an environment that is more competitive. No matter what business you're in, no matter what your role in the business is, we have to be better performers. We're in global competition. And so this message is especially relevant, and frankly, it's only getting more relevant with every day. The message that comes out of this is, finally, incredibly liberating. Great performance is not reserved for a preordained few. It is available to you and to everyone. After I speak about talent is overrated, I am still stunned by some of the responses I get from audience members who come up to talk afterwards, and lots of them do. One of the things is the greatest performers, when I speak to people who are terrific performers, they seem to embrace this message the most. I once spoke about this topic to an audience of 1,000 brain surgeons. Okay, so you talk about intimidating, well, that was my audience. Now, afterwards, we did a book signing and I talked to people. They were lined up out the door, literally. They wanted to talk about this. Even though they were already fantastic performers, they understood better than most how true it is, and they really wanted to get that message. I've been so lucky to interview so many prominent, famous, fascinating people on stage. Both Presidents Bush, Tony Blair, Prince of Wales, 3 Secretaries of State, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, Madeleine Albright, actually 4, Henry Kissinger, Bill Gates, Jack Welch, Ted Turner, Richard Branson. It's a long list, and it has been a privilege to talk to them. I do have a specific way of preparing and conducting these interviews. I do a huge amount of research ahead of time, as you might imagine, but I don't make a specific plan for the interview because I've got to follow that conversation where it goes. The most important skill is listening to what that person is really saying and responding to it, not just reading my list of questions, and also sensing how the audience is responding to this. My whole objective is to make this interesting and valuable for the audience. I want to bring out from that person across from me stuff that will be memorable, that those folks will talk about for days or weeks or months after we're done. Our topic now is, as Michael was saying, the data economy. I don't know how many of us would have guessed 2 or 3 years ago that phrases big data and data analytics would be subjects of mainstream conversation today, but they are. I don't know if big data is making CIOs happier right now, but it can be and should be, because there is tremendous promise here. Tremendous promise to make your company more successful, to make nonprofit organizations more effective, to do all kinds of great things for us, if we can use it best. We have a tremendous panel to talk with us and give us some wisdom about these things. So panelists, come on out. Shyam, I want to ask you for starters. There is so much being written and talked about with regard to big data and analytics. What's the most important thing for these attendees and their bosses to understand about it as they try to put it to work?
Well, I think the most important thing is to dream big about it.
You know, I love speaking. I just love doing it. And I think what I love the most about it is learning all the stuff I learned from doing this. And it starts well before the event. You know, we do a lot of preparation for these events, and I am on a lot of conference calls. The hard work always pays off. We get a better result at the event if we have put in the work ahead of time to prepare for it.